And thank you for joining us here at 5 o'clock. We need to get you back to some major breaking news coming out of New York City. The former president of the United States, Donald Trump, has been found guilty on multiple counts related to an alleged hush money payment in New York City in a historic criminal trial of a former president.
Now, as they were saying, what comes next?
That's the big question that everybody is watching tonight, and in the hours ahead, you have the question of sentencing. Will the former president see jail time, or will the judge impose some sort of probation on Mr. Trump? You also have the question, the looming question, perhaps the biggest question in all of this, the upcoming presidential election. It is 6 months away. What does this conviction do to the former president? He is the presumptive Republican nominee. By all indications, he will be the Republican on the ballot when we go to vote in November against former president or against current President Joe Biden. What, if any, impact does this have on his campaign?
Voters in Antrim County will decide next week who they want to be their next county clerk, with the current clerk running as a write-in. Antrim County, you may remember, was thrown into the national spotlight following the 2020 election after a tabulation error caused temporary inaccurate results. Those results were quickly corrected but helped fuel unproven claims of election fraud. Cheryl Guy says she planned to retire after that controversy and 12 years in office, but she's now running as a write-in against Republican nominee Victoria Bishop, who Guy says is an election denier, and she worries about what would happen to the clerk's office if Bishop gets elected. Throughout Michigan, voters continue to cast their ballots early ahead of Election Day. Let's take a look at the latest numbers from the state. In Oscoda County, 749 in-person voters have already cast their ballot. In nearby Crawford County, 1,304 in-person ballots have been cast so far. Manistee voters have cast 1,855 early ballots. And in Clare County, 1,476 people have stopped by the polls to vote in person. Right off the top at noon, it is Election Day here in America. It is a day where adjectives are thrown around to describe its importance, but it simply boils down to having the freedom to choose who you want to lead our country. They're taking a live look at voters doing so right now in Philadelphia. For months, Northern Michigan's election leader has been preparing you for today. Our team of reporters are spread throughout the state covering the races that will impact you. That includes the U.S. Senate race between Republican Mike Rogers and Democrat Alyssa Slotkin. 9 and 10's Sheldon Krause is covering that race and joins us live in just a moment. And in the U.S. House, incumbent Republican John Molinar is being challenged by Democrat Michael Lynch to represent the 2nd Congressional District. Jody Meeson will have live details on that race. And live in Traverse City is Megan Huskins covering the race for the 103rd State House District in Benzie, Leelanau, and Grand Traverse counties. That race could change who has control of Lansing's lower chamber. And many Americans are heading to the polls nationwide, expressing the importance of their votes and the impact of today's decisions and the impact those decisions will have on our country's future. As early voting breaks records, the latest polling data shows a tight race between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump in key battleground states. Christian Benavides is in Atlanta. Democrat Michael Lynch is trying to unseat incumbent Congressman John Molinar, who's been a Michigan congressman since 2014. Here's a look at where the vote totals stand in this race right now. And Congressman Molinar has opened up an 11,000 vote lead at this hour over his challenger. But again, these numbers very early, and just 9% of the vote reported in this race. 9 and 10's Jody Meeson keeping a close eye on this race. She's standing by in Mount Pleasant with the latest from both campaigns. Jody. Was a political earthquake that went through this country. Let's try to read the tea leaves a little bit now as we start to look into the numbers. Again, we're going with Associated Press projections tonight. We got some new projections just into our newsroom. Vice President Harris going to pick up a win in Colorado. Not a surprise there. Former President Trump picking up the state of Utah out west, as well as the state of Montana. So right now our electoral count is Trump 198, Harris 109, and it looks like a big gap right now. Don't forget, California is still out there. It's safe to say we know how that state is going to sway. So that narrows the gap a little bit, but at least in these, we'll call them relatively still early hours, Dr. Ledur, What are you seeing right now in the Electoral College map as it sort of starts to come together? Cadillac is not the only Michigan community that has or had water contamination issues. In the age of so many technological advances, it can be hard to understand how our water gets contaminated. So let's walk through several ways that can happen to any community. Sometimes our water can get contaminated by the rocks and soil that groundwater and surface water run through or over. That water eventually turns into our drinking water. Another way can be by human-made contaminants from pollution, manufacturing, or agricultural runoff. That's a major way PFAS gets into our drinking water. How the water is treated and distributed can also impact water quality. When a community treats water to remove contaminants, it can sometimes react to those treatments, creating chemicals or causing problems with the pipes that water runs through. You may remember that's what led to the Flint water crisis. Your home plumbing could also lead to water contamination. If your faucets, valves, or pipes are made out of lead, it can lead to contaminated water. And finally, not properly maintaining your private well system. If your wellhead or well cap is damaged, your water could be contaminated by polluted rainwater, insects, and even small animals. New at noon, state police are investigating a dangerous discovery at a northern Michigan thrift store. Troopers say someone found pipe bombs inside a donated bag of tools at the New Beginnings thrift shop in Harbor Springs. A worker made the discovery Wednesday afternoon. An X-ray confirmed one device contained a fuse and powder. The state police bomb squad disposed of the suspected pipe bombs. No other explosive devices were found. The impasse continues tonight in Lansing, with the State House now adjourned until New Year's Eve. The bulk of Michigan's lame duck session came to an end today following continued absences from House Republicans and one House Democrat that prevented any votes from taking place. Democrats had hoped to make the most of their final days of their trifecta of control in Lansing. But divisions over policy, including the upcoming tipped wage changes, led to all 54 House Republicans walking out of the chamber last week. One Democrat, Representative Karen Whitsett of Detroit, also skipped session this week, denying the required 56-member quorum that is needed for any business to take place. Democratic Speaker Joe Tate had earlier enacted a call of the House today, a rarely used procedure that requires all representatives to return to the Capitol by police force if necessary. But the House adjourned less than 2 hours later, and despite Whitsett and several Republicans being at the Capitol, no additional members had come to session. The injury hits keep coming, and they don't stop coming for the Detroit Lions. Detroit learned today they will be without 3 more key players for the rest of the season following Sunday's loss to the Buffalo Bills. We learned this afternoon running back David Montgomery will undergo season-ending knee surgery with an MCL injury. He's amassed 775 yards this season, including a dozen touchdowns. The Lions also lost defensive tackle Aleem McNeil to a torn ACL and cornerback Carlton Davis to, get this, a fractured jaw. Davis may return if Detroit reaches the NFC Championship game next month. The Lions are back in action Sunday as they travel to Chicago to take on the Bears. All right, I have been waiting all night to read this script. The Detroit Tigers have clinched a postseason berth for the first time since 2014. Yeah, we can clap for that. I was a senior in college the last time this happened. Detroit got a 4-1 win over the Chicago White Sox in front of 44,000 fans tonight at Comerica Park. Detroit is postseason bound for the first time in a decade. Jake and Jaden will have the highlights for you of that game, plus big moments from high school games across northern Michigan. That is just after the break on the original Big Show, Sports Overtime. Tigers and Astros finishing just moments ago. Let's get to the highlights from Game 2 as the Tigers look to advance to the American League Divisional Series. We're going to pick things up in the top of the 6th. Still scoreless, not anymore. Parker Meadows taking that baseball on a joyride to right field. It stays fair, and it is out of here. Tigers take the 1-0 lead. Now down 2-1 in the 8th inning. This is where things get fun. Kerry Carpenter on third, but a wild pitch would allow him to scamper home, tying things up at 2 with just 1 out. Tigers now with the bases loaded, and Andy Ibanez delivers a base hit down the third base line. Torkelson, Vierling, Keith all come home to score as Ibanez clears the bases. And that is your final. The Tigers, the Detroit Tigers, are moving on. They beat the Astros by a final of 5-2. They take on Cleveland. Game 1 Saturday of the American League Divisional Series.